Well, it's my great pleasure to have Johan Fritz, Major Johan Fritz of the South African Army, join us today on Fighting Men of Rhodesia. Johan did spend some time in Rhodesia, and although it was a short time, a lot of things happened during his trip to Rhodesia. And the other thing is, Johan and I both live in sort of Southeast Asia. In what might be the center of the next world war. I don't know.
No,
but he lives in Taiwan and I live in the Philippines, and in between us is the South China Sea.
that's
So
right.
it's quite an interesting thing. But we're on the same time zone. It's now Sunday morning. We both should be in church, but neither of us are. Johan, thanks very much. Give us a little bit about your background and tell us how you ended up in Rhodesia.
Good morning, John, and thank you. It's an honor to be on your channel. I've watched several of your videos in the past, and quite impressive. I must say, I don't think I belong in the same league of many of these guys. But anyway, when one gets older, you sort of feel more you would like to share about what happened in the past. So therefore, I'm doing it, and hopefully, I can sort of share some of the experiences I had. Let me just begin by saying I started my military training in Potchefstroom in 1977. I did basic training there, and then within the first 2 months, we did junior leaders selection, and I was off the Oudtshoorn infantry school, and then that year spent my training, being trained as a junior leader. At the end of the year, I got the rank of second lieutenant, and I was then sent back to 3 SAI in Potchefstroom. As it worked at that stage, you basically got trained, and then you were returned to a unit to basically train new soldiers, because we had conscription at that time. When I joined, it was not yet 2 years, but during the time I was busy at Oudtshoorn, they changed it to 2 years conscription. And then they also had a system where you could join short service. This was like a semi-permanent force where they paid you like a huge bonus those days, enough to buy a car. So that was my opportunity to buy my first car. So I joined 3 years short service, as they call it. Then I proceeded to be a platoon commander in Potchefstroom. Got my first intake and trained the guys. Basically, went through all the training, basic training, and then all the training up to the point of about 9 months, and then we were ready to be deployed in the operational area. At that stage, we had 2 operational companies ready to be deployed. We were fortunate; our company was then deployed to the Caprivi. The other company, they deployed to Ovambaland, Yanana. So we arrived in the Caprivi just after the attack. You may recall that in 1978, in August, there was an attack from across the Zambezi River from Zambia, where they basically attacked Katima Molilo, and a number of South African soldiers perished. But anyway, we were then based at a sort of a very beautiful base called Vanilla. It's right in the corner where the Zambezi River comes from the north, and where the Cop Lane basically starts and runs to the west. So we were based there for about 5 months. There was not much going on at that stage, because after the attack on Katima Molilo, there was like several revenge attacks from the South African forces, and they brought back loads and loads of bodies from across the river. So clearly, SWAPO was then dealt a heavy blow, and they fled the area. So during our time there, not much was going on. we basically, our main task was to dominate the area towards the border area. So it was a beautiful area with wildlife and elephants and, you know, all kinds of animals, green, luscious, but very flat sand, unlike the terrain we were used to in Potchefstroom, you know. Then at some stage, my platoon, I was a platoon commander. We were the first to be given the task to cross the border to go into Zambia and dominate a sort of an area just close to the Kap lane, as we called it at that time. So that was quite an experience for us. We were a bunch of young, inexperienced guys, never really saw any contact, and for us to go over and with the instruction not to be seen by the population, that was an adventure. But anyway, it was mainly uneventful. Maybe just mention one event. I had one of my section leaders one day was bitten by a snake, and you know, while we were in Zambia, that was quite an experience because he was in quite a terrible state, and he had to be casevaced back to base at that stage. And we realized later that he was bitten by a black mamba, you know, and they were quite poisonous snakes, but he fortunately survived. Well, then our company returned. Our company commander was then a company Captain Johan Simon. We returned back to South Africa for retraining. And then in May of 1979, we were redeployed to Wambeland, Inana. And again, although it was the area where all the things were happening at that stage, our area was relatively quiet and not much happened. We returned in September of that year, 1979. And by that time, I've joined permanent force. I realized that, I enjoy the army life, and, this was what I was going to want to do for the rest of my life. So when we returned, it was basically a sort of a period where there were only a few months left before the majority of the company, they were going to just hand back everything and complete their national service. The national servicemen then, and my platoon and company. Then by the end of September, I have to mention my company commander at that stage was a young officer who just completed his military academy training with the name of Twakis de Tue. He was a lieutenant. I was also a lieutenant at that stage. And I was his second in command. We were just, in the base and basically finishing off our, last month or two before the troops clear out. Then one day, Twakis and two other company commanders, they were called in, and they had to leave to do or attend a meeting for a special operation that was going to take place. They left for a few days, and when they returned, we were told that we were going to participate in a special operation in the Rhodesia. We immediately started with some retraining, and then, John, I cannot remember all the dates anymore because it's like many, many years ago now. But I think toward the end of October, middle October, maybe we left with a huge convoy of Hippo vehicles.
1979.
That's correct. And then one morning, very, very early, we left and we just headed north. I can still remember our first overnight was at Petersburg. And then on the second day, we arrived close to the Limpopo River in an area called Madimbo, where we, spent a few days. yeah, before we even arrived there, just before we left our camp, all our rifles had to be, all the numbers had to be removed from the rifles, and we were basically told then that when we deploy in Rhodesia, that we were not supposed to be there as South Africans. Silly, well, anyway, I think everybody knew we were there. But we were then re-equipped with all Rhodesian camouflage uniforms, all our South African equipment, with the exception of our rifles, which were basically sprayed camouflage colors, brown and green. So we kept our rifles, and we were equipped with, from boots to everything, you know. Then on a given day, by the way, our battalion commander was the then Commandant Roland de Vries, and the operation was called Ops Bowler. At that stage, it was just before the elections, I think, were due to happen in 1980. So I think there was the idea that South Africa had to assist and deploy in the southwest area of Rhodesia at that stage, which was the Sengwe area, I assume, if I remember correctly. Then one morning early, we left two of our companies. We crossed via by bridge, and one company crossed the river and basically walked in. Our base was going to be Mabalauta. There was an airfield or a landing strip there, and therefore this area was chosen as a suitable area for a tactical HQ. Now we left, and I can still remember we passed a few small towns. I think there was a town Triangle and Chiretsi. Then eventually we arrived at this base, which was right on the bank of the Nwanetsi River. We were actually right, you could look down. It was a biggish river, but dry at that stage. I think it was a dry period at that stage. When we got to the base, basically they were like one building for the HQ and basically tents, but it was not really a base ready to have many troops sleeping there. So the task was basically to deploy as quickly as possible, and we started to patrol the area. Now, for us, it was a very big difference. Beautiful area, I have to say, and for us, a great adventure. The area was totally different from Ovambaland that we, and the Caprivi that we were used to. In the Caprivi and Ovambaland, you totally have sand and it's flats. There's no hills whatsoever. And here we arrived in an area where it was basically a subtropical area, I would say. Lots of hills and rocky area, gravel roads. And what struck me at that time was like, it seemed at that time that in the area where we deployed, there were not many people around. And from what we understood later was that people were mainly grouped into, what do they call them? Protected villages, yes. The people were in protected villages, and our task was basically to try and dominate the area. Now, it was basically an exercise in futility because, from what I understood, it was an area of 72,000 square kilometers. And we were, a battalion of about 800 troops, three companies under Commandant Roland de Vries then, with our three company commanders, Stokkies de Toey and Jan Hooghart, who later went to 32 Battalion, and Micho Delport, who also later became a battalion commander of 32 Battalion. Then, we were immediately deployed in the area. Of course, it was very difficult to move around in vehicles because the roads were heavily mined at that stage, and almost every time when we deployed, the roads had to be swept, by the engineers. So we lifted several mines during our time there. Then that basically brings me to the time that we deployed as a company. We left, in our hippos, and we were given the task to deploy in a certain area. We left, and we arrived on the evening of the 1st of December, 1979, and we arrived at an area which we thought was suitable to have a temporary base for the night. Now, normally when you have a platoon temporary base, it would not be that big, about probably diameter of like 50, 80 meters or so. So this one was a little bit bigger because we had 3 platoons and also a number of support vehicles at that stage. The vehicles were supposed to drop us off in the evening, and they were supposed to just leave back to the HQ the next morning. So as is the custom in the evening, just before last light, we had our stand 2, and we had basically the HQ in the middle, and the 3 platoons around us in a very big circle. The area was, I think, was a suitable area for a temporary base. Lots of thorn bush, low bushy area, and I think it was the right place to have a base for the night. So everything fine. The next morning we woke up again before first light. We had our stand 2, and as soon as we called off stand 2, and we just got up, and we were ready, preparing breakfast for the morning. Then we were suddenly under attack from all over. At that stage, Twakkies and we were like standing next to each other. We grabbed our rifles, and we just ducked behind a tree. We were under heavy fire then, but we were in the middle, and we had to try and find out from which side was the attack. It wasn't long, only a few minutes, when Twakkies turned to me and he told me, he just looked at me and he just said, Johan, I'm shot. And I looked at him, and his head just fell down, and he basically, I could see, he was dead. At that moment, the bullet basically entered him right here above, the neck area, and it basically went through his body, and it was like just the bullet was still stuck under his hip area. So it basically, I think it destroyed his, everything inside. And then, I was faced with a very difficult task. Here I was sort of a very young, inexperienced officer, not, experienced at all in combat. And suddenly I was faced, my company commander is dead next to me, and I had to take over. The troops were firing back, and it was quite an intense fighting going on. But after a while, I realized, we had to do something. But I should just mention, about 10 meters from me, we had one of our big truck, one of the support vehicles that were there. and it was ready to basically move back. And on the track was a 60mm mortar. We had with us a transport NCO at that stage, Sergeant Hendrik Kielder. And when we were being attacked, this guy, he basically, while we were under fire, he jumped onto the truck and got the mortar pipe down with a number of bombs, and he basically single-handedly, he started to, put a few mortars in the air and fired back in the general direction of the attack, which I think was, that was quite brave of him to do. So he was doing that for a while, and he was also looking at me, and I sort of shouted at him that, my commander was shot. He left everything that he was busy with, and he immediately came and, turned old Tokis over, and he tried to resuscitate him, did everything, but it was clear that it was already over. I was faced, with taking over now and then, get everybody under control, basically just to cease fire, because we couldn't just continue and fire. At the moment we stopped firing, we realized that the firing from the other side also stopped, and then I immediately had to get in contact with the HQ. We then realized that we had, other than Twakis that was being killed at that stage, we had a number of casualties, probably about 10, mainly shrapnel wounds in their backs. But these troops had to be casevaced as soon as possible. So I got hold of Commandant Fritz then, and at that stage I could still remember, we had the code names for the company commander was a Sunray, and the company 2IC was a Sunray Miner. So I just reported, and I said, the Sunray is critically wounded. I didn't want to say that he was killed, and we require immediate assistance. It didn't take long for an Alouette or two to arrive. Then the 2IC of our battalion, Willem Welgemoed, Major at that stage, he arrived because obviously, they immediately knew at that stage there was this inexperienced guy left with a company, and they just had to bring in somebody stronger. So he arrived, and he took over command, and we casevaced all the wounded guys. Fortunately, none of them is serious, and all of them later recovered. But Tokis, he was put in a body bag and taken back to the base. For the remainder of the time there, not much happened. Well, I can just add, we did a quick follow-up after the attack, and we found a lot of blood and guns left behind. So I think the enemy at that stage, they must have fled in a hurry, because we were really firing back at them. I think we gave them back more than they expected, but we didn't find any casualties. They probably took them with them. Then for the remainder of the period, I did a few more patrols. We had to do ambushes here and there. I can just remember one night we were dropped at a certain area, and we were told to walk into a certain area to lay an ambush. But it was extremely difficult for us. In Novemberland, you could have your compass bearing and then walk in and more or less reach your target area. But what we found there is like, it was like up and down in riverbeds, and I just found the walking on a compass in that area was extremely difficult, especially for us inexperienced guys. And I think sometimes the compasses, they weren't that accurate because you were up and down. And anyway,
you also have magnetic north that keeps,
That's the thing. That's the thing. I was told that later. And that one night while we were walking basically to the area where we were supposed to lay an ambush, it was a very, very dark night, and I was supposed to lead them to the area, and it started raining. And at some stage, I just realized it's going to be impossible for us to get anywhere, and I just signaled to everybody just to go down where you are, and basically just one to this side, one to that side, and do a little bit of all-round defense. And we slept, or tried to sleep for the remainder of the night until the next morning. But then basically, we couldn't reach the ambush position on time. And after a few days, we just returned. At another time, I was sent to pick up a company that was out, in the bush. I was sent there with a few hippos, and and then suddenly one of the hippos right in front of me, had a mine explosion on the one of the front wheels. Fortunately, the driver was strapped, and he was a little bit shocked, but nothing much. But as we were taught, normally during our training, when there's a mine, you really you have to debus, because often mines go hand in hand with ambushes. So we went into all-round defense, and we had to establish whether there were more mines or other traps in the vicinity. Fortunately, there weren't. We managed to get the vehicle back. We had very good support at that stage, and we got the troops back as well. Then the rest of our time there was not eventful at all, John. We then reached the period, I think the peace agreement was signed around about the 12th of December, if I'm not mistaken, at that time. So we left the area a few days prior to that. This time we left via Dakotas. Then my group, we were on our way out back to Madimbo, and I would say just maybe 10 minutes after we left Mabalahuta, we would do very low flying, treetop flying, because there was still a lot of activity in that area. And I remember looking out the window, and I saw some movement on the ground. I could see people there. But, with low flying, you cannot really, you see them and then it's over. But that very moment, when I was looking down, there were like holes appearing through my two boots, as my boots were like on the floor, and the bullets came in and basically exited the fuselage of the Dakota right here on my side and that side. And suddenly I felt a sort of a sharp pain in my back. But, I didn't want to say anything. And I was just worried at that stage that our Dakota was going to go down, because we were clearly under fire. But, as you probably know, the Dakotas, they were very, very strong aircraft. Many people often said once they were in the air, they didn't go down easily. So this deck basically got us safely on the ground. when we landed at Madimbo, I was immediately taken to the sick bay, and fortunately, I only had a few very superficial, the shrapnel from the aircraft fuselage, basically just a few pieces just enter my back. Basically the skin, just very, very small pieces. There was not even a need for stitches, whatever. So the few pieces were removed and disinfected, and that was it. I basically quickly forgot about that. Then, we had to hand back everything, and then we returned, and our company, they reached the end of their military service, and they left the Defense Force. I never had the chance to meet up with old talkies. We were very good friends at that stage. We spent a lot of time together, even, after, as officers, you often, had your activities after hours and spent time together. But when we went back, I unfortunately never had the opportunity to meet up with his family, which I regret to this day. But a year or so ago, on Facebook, by coincidence, I met up with a cousin of him who's still in the Defense Force. She's a female. She's a warrant officer now. And she was very pleased to hear and ask me a lot of questions about talkies. And then she just told me that, the family, he has two sisters. His parents already passed away. And she then told me that, the family never really got closure about what happened on that day, on the 2nd of December, when he died. And then I told her, I'm on my way to South Africa October, and I've basically set up a meeting with the family, and I'm really looking forward to have a talk with the family and just share with them. It's like 44 years ago that it happened now, but just would like to share with them and just spend time with the family. That's basically my what happened to me in Rhodesia, John. Again, I can just say in closing, for us as young soldiers in those days, as was the case most probably in Rhodesia as well, as soldiers we were trained to do the job on the ground, and in those days we never really realized that many decisions were taken on political levels that we were never really aware of. Only much later in my life, and recently even more, I read a lot about all the politics behind behind the scenes, what happened. But again, as soldiers, we served the government of the day, and at that stage, I think the decision was taken to intervene and to see to what extent we could assist Rhodesia. Rhodesia was, very dear to South Africa, a close ally, and I think that was a sort of a last effort to see if we could just, make an impact. Unfortunately, things never worked out as we all had hoped that it would work out. Things changed. Things changed there in Rhodesia. Things changed in South Africa too. I then continued to serve in the Defense Force for a while. I went to the military academy where I completed my BMIL degree in Saldanha, and then I was the second in command at 2 SSCC Battalion. Up until September of 1990. At that stage, I realized that things were developing in the wrong direction in South Africa, and I couldn't see myself part of a defense force where I would have to integrate with people that we previously fought against. So at that stage, I got an offer from the private sector. I worked for a number of years in the private sector and became a senior manager in a large insurance company in Cape Town. But then at the end of 2004, we were tired of corporate life and the way things were developing in South Africa. My wife and I decided to make a drastic change in our lives. Our kids were grown and they finished school, so we decided to leave the country and do something adventurous. And finally, we ended up in Taiwan. I started in Taiwan January of 2004 as an English teacher. And I've been doing it for almost 20 years, teaching Taiwanese kids from kindergarten to junior high school level to speak better English. And over the years, just, fell in love with the country, fell in love with the Asian, the area where we live. Where we live, Taiwan is very much in the center of the whole Asian area. So it's a perfect place from which to basically travel everywhere. So I've been fortunate to visit the Philippines 3 times, Boracay twice, and General Santos City, I think, in the south. I've been to Thailand several times, Malaysia, Singapore, Macau, basically everywhere except Japan and China. But very happy living here. I have to say that Taiwan is my second home. Not that I have a first home anymore. I feel that I will definitely not return to South Africa. We're very happy here. It's a safe country, although the dark clouds loom, as you referred to previously. But I have to say, it's been like that since we arrived here 20 years ago. There were like talks of China not happy, and as it happens every year, there's a new government, and then things became calmer, and then there's another government, and then they're not happy again. So the current government is not a government that China is happy with. So we have every now and then the threat of planes in the vicinity and China blocking off Taiwan. So, and it appears in newspapers all over the world, and everybody's always worried about what's happening. Are you safe there? But I have to say, in Taiwan, most people here feel safe. It's a beautiful country. It's a safe country. It's a stable country. It's a country where we can call it home, and irrespective of what's going to happen in the future, if I can, I will still assist them if it's necessary.
Yeah.
But we feel it's a democracy that has to be defended. So this is where I will spend the remainder of my life, and I'm happy retiring here. So that's basically my story, John. In short.
Just while I'm thinking about it, the guy who, the brave man who fired the 60mm mortar and rendered medical assistance, or tried to render medical assistance to your Sunray, I believe he was decorated for his actions on that day.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I forget his name. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a Henny Kilder. When we arrived back in base, I had a discussion with Willem Welgemoed, and I told him that I thought that what this guy did on that day was really an act of bravery, and I suggested that we nominate him for the honoris crux at that stage. So Willem Welgemoot asked me, to write the recommendation. There's a performer that you write to recommend. It's not something that you get every quite so often. So, but I was firmly of the belief, being there, noticing what he did, getting the mortars to fire and under fire, not fearing for his life, trying to help Old Twakkies Way was nothing more than an act of bravery. So I nominated him, and Willem Welgemoot approved it. It was sent to Army HQ, and I think deservedly he was decorated with the honoris crux, and I still honor him to this day. And we've totally lost contact, but I wish I could get in contact with him. He later became an officer. I think he retired as a lieutenant colonel in the Defense Force as well. But I would love to get in contact with old Hendrik Kilder, because I have to say he was probably at that stage, he was the most experienced, because at that stage we were like young officers, with all of us like 3-4 years service in the army, while he was there already. I think he was already in his 30s, with probably 10 years behind him. So he was the most senior among us, and deservedly he got his HC, and I'm glad for him. I was happy, that he was there on that day. I'm sure he helped us a lot to drive the enemy back, and he was a brave man. Yes, yeah. Surely.
Was it a gold or a bronze or a?
No, it was just the normal. I think you get the normal, and then you get a silver and the gold. I'm not sure if there's a bronze as well, but he got the normal, just the HC, okay. the basic one. Yeah.
Yeah, I know with a lot of these medals, like for example, the Victoria Cross or the Congressional Medal of Honor. What's also a factor is did his actions affect the outcome of the battle? And it seems as though this guy firing off his mortars actually caused the enemy to retreat, and that's a big factor as well. That he played a pivotal role in change
Absolutely.
Of fortunes. Yeah,
absolutely. And as soon as even just one mortar pipe, it's difficult to for people to understand that, but one mortar pipe makes a big difference. And when you're under attack and the enemy finds that you're firing back, they were firing mortars at us, and as soon as the enemy started to fire back, and he probably got some of them quite accurately nearby their positions, they realized we have something stronger there, not only small arms. So he definitely, if it wasn't for him, who knows, we could have lost more of our troops on that day.
Yeah.
That possibly caused the enemy to just leave quicker. Who knows, but sure, I totally agree with you. It is quite possible that one has to take into consideration that an act like that possibly affected the outcome of the specific incident, and he definitely deserved getting that recognition.
Yeah. Changing the subject, I was interested to hear from our mutual friend Mark that there's quite a big South African community in Taiwan.
Yes, we do have. Unfortunately, South Africa has become a very, very difficult place for a lot of people, especially white males, to find secure jobs. My son is in South Africa, in Cape Town at the moment. Now, he studied here in Taiwan and he obtained his master's degree. But he loves South Africa, and he went back a year ago. But as a young white he just struggles. There's just not work available for them, because of black economic empowerment. As a white male, it's virtually impossible to get a job. But anyway, many South Africans have come to Taiwan over the past number of years, because the English school market is a huge market in Taiwan. The Taiwan government has basically decided a few years ago that Taiwan has to become a fully bilingual country by 2030. So there are many initiatives going on to train as much as possible of the population. The schools are bringing in more and more English teachers. So the market for English teachers here is a huge market. Taiwan is an important country in the world when it comes to the production of semiconductors, and they do a lot of business all over the world. So more and more they require English-speaking people to do business with other countries. So there's a huge demand for people on the business side, as well as the training side, to equip people better. So I hope more people would come. When I first arrived here, we had quite an influx from Americans, British people, and Canadians. But I think after COVID, we see a little bit of a lull. I don't know why. For some reason, not as many people nowadays. It could be the Chinese situation as well. But currently, many schools are understaffed, and there's currently more demand than supply for English teachers. So it's a huge opportunity for people to come and work in a very nice environment where the cost of living is not that high, and a very friendly country with great food and great scenery, great mountains. We have more than 200 peaks, higher than 3,000 meters in Taiwan. So it's a great country for mountaineering and experiencing nature. Although very, very small, from north to south, not much longer than about 420 kilometers, with 23 million people. So densely populated in some areas, but the mountain areas are very, very open areas still, where you can still find areas where there are no people. So it's a great country to live and explore nature, but a developed country where you can get everything you want to, with highly developed cities and industries. The public transport is some of the best you can get in the world, with a high-speed train system running from north to south, basically in just under 2 hours. So you can basically get anywhere on the island. The public transport is some of the best in the world. So it's a great country to live. I'm very happy here. I feel very safe. There's virtually no crime, petty crime here and there, but you can walk anywhere at any time of the night, and you never feel that there's any sort of threat. So it's a great country to live. I'm very happy to be here, I have to say.
Johan, thank you so much for a very interesting talk. I could probably talk to you for another hour about living in Southeast Asia. I've also been to Boracay. It's such a beautiful beach.
It is.
Really appreciate your input. It's part of our Rhodesian history, and I'm really glad we managed to get it on the record. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. It was really a privilege to be on your channel, and I'm a keen follower of your channel too, and I'll be keen to watch any future videos that may come out. And thank you once again for the opportunity.